This is Autoline After Hours, unscripted, uncensored, unapproved. Are you a podcast kind of person? Then look for Autoline After Hours, wherever you go for your favorite podcast.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg-Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Hey, Gary.
John, so I normally ask, how are you? But instead I will ask you, where are you?
I'm in Chicago right now for the North American International Powertrain Conference, and I sort of ducked out of the conference to come do the show.
Well, we're very glad that you did. And
yeah,
I think
I'm glad to be here.
It's going to be a very good show, and it's going to have a little something to do with powertrain. And so I think we should just get right into it.
Go ahead.
All right, so we're going to, our very special guest is Martin Fischer, who is with one of the top automotive suppliers in the world. Martin runs the North American operations for ZF, and he is a member of the board of management of ZF, which is based in Germany, but he operates here in the greater Detroit area. So Martin, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Good afternoon.
Thank you. And we'll bring in our colleague, Lindsay Brooke, who is the editor-in-chief of Automotive Engineering. Somewhat ironic that it's SAE publication and John's at an SAE conference. And so we're pretty SAE intensive. So Lindsay, thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Hey,
Great.
Lindsay.
So Martin, lots of people probably know ZF for the step gear transmissions that the company has made famously through the years. Your business has got to be changing from that to something else. So give us a capsule view of how the company is transitioning.
Yeah, Gary, I believe really the last 7-8 years have made a big difference for us in terms of transformation. And 7-8 years appears to be a short time in the lifespan of a 100-year-old company, but it has been rather quick. And when you mirror that against the speed of transformation right now, 7-8 years is a long time. So it started all really with the conviction it is about electronics and software that we need to get into to create additional value for our customers and for the company itself. And you're well aware of the first big steps that were taken when ZF acquired first TRW and then WABCO on the commercial vehicle side. So that was truly foundational steps to say, okay, we depart into the future. And then fast forward those 7-8 years to today. Now we really set the vision to be a technology provider to the mobility industry. And we look forward and say, what does it need in the next 7 to 8 years? And for ourselves, in order to depict that a little bit, we talk about the microchip as being the new gear, right? From that 100-year-old thing to where we really want to go. And the other idea that we propel quite a bit is software first and digital always. So that's the thought that we want to put into the company to really shape the transformation over the next couple of years.
Martin, how do you see things going forward for the company then? ZF is one of the major producers of automatic transmissions in the world, in an automotive world that's transitioning to EVs. And I'm sure you've got plans for that, but talk us through a little bit of how the company looks at how it's going to make this transition.
Yeah. We have our 4 activity fields basically, and you refer to one of them, and that is definitely e-mobility. We have the other ones with automated driving, vehicle motion control, and integrated safety. So we play 4 important trends in the industry. Then referring to the good old heritage of transmissions, we do know that's going to come to an end. And the way we see the electrification trend right now is at good speed. So it's real. And we have been preparing the company for that transition, obviously. So when we look at our products, our technologies, our offerings today, we are fully there. So what used to be really transmissions of all sorts at great quality are now the electric motors. We have the power electronics, the inverters, and we still have transmissions, right? Even though 1 or max 2 speed that go with it. So we are ready product-wise, technology-wise to transition from the good old mechanical world into fully electric drivetrains.
And Martin, as the industry makes this transition into electrification, one of the major challenges right now is cost, is getting costs down on the retail side so the vehicles are affordable, and also cost to the OEM and throughout the supply chain. ZF is a major systems supplier, and I'm wondering if you could kind of give us some clue as to how a systems supplier can play a big role in cost reduction. You know, as Gary and John mentioned, you're playing in mechatronics now, you're playing in purely mechanical systems, you're playing in electronics, and all of them affect OEM cost and retail cost. And you know, how can you help out in this regard? What roles can you be playing, or are you playing?
Yeah, when we really think that broad, as you suggest, Lindsay, right, and go over all the various product offerings and ranges, I think the good old economies of scale still matter. And as a major tier 1 supplier, we want to push that forward. So when we go through the various trends, let's say e-mobility, there was the idea, right? Is there going to be anything left for the tier 1 suppliers? Or are we going to see electric motors, inverters, everything on the OE side in future? And as usual, the pendulum swings forth and back. And we see that with generic solutions that we can prepare and on which we can then bank volumes, we are back in a game that almost seemed to be lost from the get-go. And we do have good technology at scale that we can provide. And that scale really goes across the whole product range, right? It hits the good old mechanical elements, it goes into electronics, but then also into software. And that's also an area where we say experience and scale taken together gives a tier 1 supplier a very strong position.
Martin, you mentioned that one of the areas that ZF is involved in is automated or autonomous driving for vehicles. And you know, before the show, we were talking about CES, and I remember, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago at a press conference, ZF and NVIDIA announced that they were collaborating on technology, which you know, back then NVIDIA, very few people had heard of, and now they're sort of like the blue chip company in that whole chip space. So how is that working out? And is this mainly going to be a play for commercial vehicles versus passenger cars, or both, or what does it look like?
Yeah, it's fortunately, again, a broad and scale play. So to your last question, it's going to be in the passenger car area and commercial vehicle area. So we were as ZF relatively early in the game, teaming up with NVIDIA and saying, wow, that's high-performing chips that NVIDIA has to offer. And it's going to be an engine for automated and autonomous driving. So that's when we started to design together the first high-performance computers. And you're well right, it's probably 5 years since we have been in that. So it was good anticipation. And in the meanwhile, with the centralization of our electric and electronics architectures, yeah, these computers, these high-performance computers, get en vogue, get in high demand. And in the meanwhile, between NVIDIA and ZF, we have started to develop the first serious programs that are going to go into production as early as in 2 years from now.
Martin, let's go back to what you were just saying about make versus buy on the part of the automakers, because they've expressed a strong interest of doing more vertical integration. You know, Tesla set the model on that. Well, actually, Henry Ford way back when set the model on that, but more recently Tesla. And, you know, the legacy OEMs see this as an opportunity to boost their own margins by bringing things back in-house. But as you well know, too, when it comes to the GM Ford and the Chrysler part of Stellantis that are unionized, they have union contracts that is going to force them to maintain employment levels. But you had suggested you think that you're back in the game in this. So I'd love to hear more detail about that.
Yeah, I think we can still be a very good partner in both developing and manufacturing. And the way we approach that is always with great openness. So the good old model for tier one like ZF to come in and say, yeah, we want to do it all for you, that probably won't work. But taking the best of both sides together and say, again, starting with a design, how can we optimize? Then going into manufacturing later on saying, what's our common footprint and where can one help the other? Is a North American customer going to insource the whole thing in the North American region, but we help out in China? That can all be models that we cater to. And I think that kind of flexibility was a little bit of a learning process for us, but for a tier one supplier can be very promising going forward.
Getting into assisted driving and autonomous driving, ZF was, to my memory, the first company that started to coin the term level 2+, which is kind of an enhanced, SAE level 2 with a lot more capability. And we're seeing this growing in the ADAS space as companies bring in LiDARs and bring in more sensor capability. And it looks to me like the level 4 and 5 space is going to be really commercial vehicle plays for the foreseeable future. Recently, we had Argo AI kind of be dissolved between Ford and Volkswagen. Aurora is really in trouble, but Waymo and Cruise are still kind of kicking it in this area. How does ZF look at this split that's happening and this marketplace going forward?
Yeah, interesting. You refer to the introduction of that term. And you were probably part of that CES press conference when we laid it out. And I still have the graphics in front of my eye, right? Where we had that one side, level 2+, and then were pass cars. And then we had level 3, level 4 up with the commercial vehicles, a little bit of robo-taxis and autonomous shuttles. So we still believe in that same view. Yeah. Also, when we approach that topic business-wise and engineering-wise, we keep it separate within ZF in those two buckets. So a lot of effort happening here and now to launch L2+ programs. And we keep adding features to that. But then on the L4 side, at least in ZF's case, we limit the effort to an ODD, to an operation that we think is feasible. That for us is autonomous shuttles. So that's where we are very active on a level 4, but we keep the complexity relatively low. We don't go robo-taxis, but let's say commuter shuttles that go on a described route in open traffic, though. So level 4 truly.
Okay, and your company is a big player in heavy trucks, transmissions and axles and so forth, and that's seen to be a big application market for this. How do you see that playing out in commercial vehicles, level 4 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, we see it happening in two areas. So one is really the on-highway hub-to-hub transit. So that can be an area for L4 applications. We also see it, though, in shipping yard applications. So when it's about moving tractors and trailers in a relatively well-defined area, that's where we also think the ODD is manageable. And we cater, again, to those two applications, both from a component subsystem status, but also working on virtual drivers, for instance, for the shipyards.
So it sounds like a geo-fenced ODD-centric kind of pathway is what you're looking at.
That's true.
Thank you.
Martin, we've talked a lot about autonomous vehicles, but more to what's going on at the moment, electric vehicles are certainly proliferating in a way that I think is surprising to many. Talk to us a little bit about how, you guys have made or are making the transition from largely ICE component supply to EVs. I mean, what is ZF's role in that space?
Yeah. I mean, let's start with a look inside of ZF. Right? How did we all get that kicked off, that activity? How did we generate initial technology and then also the businesses with it? And our approach has been that we had a little group that started that activity for us. So really in a very concentrated manner, very dedicated, no disturbance, right? no look from the old guys saying, what are you doing? And is that really going to lead us anywhere? So we had that business started really from a small team and let it grow for a certain while. And that letting grow led to first customer contracts. However, when we then looked at it and said, okay, where now to? We have the competencies on board, but we have to go that big transformation, right? Because here's still 30, 40,000 people working on transmissions in the world. And here's maybe a couple of thousand who now already work into e-mobility. So last year, we then decided, let's bring that back together, because we know we got to pivot the organization from the old world into the new. So no longer was there that startup division, so to say, but now it's the combined one, where over time we transfer both on an engineering side, but also on a manufacturing side, people and skills into the new world. So quite an interesting process with significant effort, a lot of educational effort in it, a lot of change management happening. But for us, the only thing to get from the old world into the new world.
But you brought the people together. You didn't say, we'll see you guys, and your skills are not important to us anymore.
No, we took exactly that approach to say, okay, your skills might not be completely future-proof, so we do expect from you to adjust and pick up new skills and expose everyone to, for instance, trainings on electric mobility. And it is a matter of the next decade or 1.5 to really transform everyone. But we want to hold on to our good people, to the competencies, and hope many, many of them join us through that transition.
So, Martin, what's your take on companies like Ford and Renault spinning off their EV operations as standalone businesses versus others who have decided, no, we want to keep those people together? How do you read the way that's going?
Yeah, I mean, as usual, there's not the right and the wrong, right? I think there's just a decisive decision, a decisive approach that is taken, and I think both are going to work out fine. So to be watched a little bit, right? For us, it is very important. We want to keep all our people engaged. And that's a little bit the thing also about our company being foundation-based, where we see an obligation to take everyone with us into the future.
That's a great point.
When I'm in a public company, right, serving the capital markets in a good way, there's other motivations as well that have to be considered. So again, no right, no wrong. I think both can lead to success.
That's a great point. And as you make your bets, as to where you have to put your resources as a company, and as you have automakers saying, hey, we want you to sign up for this, that, and the other thing, what's your sense of EV adoption? Because it's going to be very different all over the world. It's even different within given regions. So as you know, in the Scandinavian regions of Europe, very high, extremely high EV take rate with very generous incentives pushing that. In the US, we're seeing very regional adoption rates of EVs. There is a goal by the current administration to get to 50% EV by the end of this decade. But how do you decide how you're really going to make your investments? Because a lot of these are just guesses going forward as to what the adoption rate's going to be.
Yeah. As ZF, we are truly committed to e-mobility, and we are rather bullish, and we are investing forward. We do see a strong market driven by regulation in Europe. We see a really, really strong push and pull in China. And I mean, we are seeing also very, very positive signs here in North America from those first vehicles getting to market and being in demand. So that is, first of all, where we really focus. And we have even made strict decisions to say we are not going to invest into next generation of 8-speed transmissions. So clear decision there. How's the volume going to play out? I mean, the crystal ball is going to tell maybe. So we have to be ready to swing, right, either way. And that's, again, back to the organizational topic, a good thing when you have the same resources that you can pivot with a decent lead time.
Great point, yeah.
Martin, are you having the same difficulties that a lot of other suppliers and OEMs are having in terms of finding engineering and technical talent right now? Not necessarily finding it, but competing with everybody else who's looking for the same people.
Can only confirm that. I mean, the market is so hot, right? We are in a good position that we have, with our vision, a lot of attractive roles really to offer, and really super exciting products to work on. But it is definitely a hot, competitive place around the globe. No matter if you're here in Michigan, go out to the West Coast, be in China, be in Germany, engineers are in high demand, and yeah, we are fighting for them, engaging.
And I'm curious too, back to ZF's roots, there's a lot of discussion and development now with autonomous aircraft and electric powered aircraft. And, you guys started out with Zeppelin gearboxes, but are there opportunities that you're playing in right now for electrified and autonomous aircraft?
Just at the very surface. So I got to say, with our 4 activity fields and all the transformation happening, I mean, we want to well direct our funds, right, into those areas that are close to our core. So we focus very much on core these days, less on aerospace.
Martin, let me ask you, since electric vehicles are, comparatively speaking, to the 100-year plus history of the auto industry, a new thing, to what extent is what ZF is doing is developing products that it then brings to the OEMs and says, look at this, versus how much of it is the OEMs are saying, we need this, and then you work to provide it?
No, we go very proactive. And I mean, the field is interesting when you look at motors and how old electric motors are and the base principles of it. One could be tempted to say, what's new isn't all the same. So that's why we are super eager in saying, no, we take an electric motor with the power electronics together and see how we can innovate. Key topics are better efficiency, right? That's going to increase range or lower the battery size. And then obviously it's the typical cost thing that we also try to approach. But it is really starting from research and development into application engineering that we want to create benefits for the OEMs, and obviously also differentiation to our competitors.
Martin, go ahead, John.
Okay. Do you do any business with the EV startups? And I'm wondering, if you are, what are you learning from them? I got to imagine doing business with a startup is very different than doing business with a legacy automaker. And I'm even wondering, if you do business with them, if that's why you took on some of that business, to learn how they operate.
Absolutely, John. That's one good reason, right, to be out there. It's the business perspective to grow with the newcomers. That for sure is important. It's true here in the US. It's true in China in particular as well. But we enjoy the speed and the agility in which we work. So good old approach, right? Receive the specification from the OEM and then spend 2 years to not deviate too much from that spec and bring the product. That's not the way it works. So specifications at the get-go are rather high level to an extent. And then the journey is being started together with some of these new automotive customers. And I mean, we have to adjust our processes to that a bit. But I have to say our engineers, they really love that approach. And what we have started now in the meanwhile is that we rotate engineers through that experience, exactly for the reason that you mentioned. How can we bring that kind of speed and agility into our troops?
Lindsay.
Well, yeah, just to follow that up, it always makes me think of CES, and you had mentioned earlier that you're going to be a player there at CES. Martin, can you give us a hint on what ZF is going to be showing?
Oh, wow, a preview. That's quite a question, Lindsay. I want to keep it a little bit of a secret and a good surprise. But what you can expect from us out there is a couple of proof points, really. We had that next generation mobility set out as a slogan, right, years ago. And then we last year went into next generation mobility now. So it's really taking place. And we want to deliver you, the journalists, the public, our customers, really good proof points to say all the things that we promised, like the high performance computer, Gary, are taking shape and are now in the cars. Back to that point, right? 7-8 years is a long time in the meanwhile. And we want to prove our speed.
So are you finding across the board, I mean, as you talk to people in the industry from, because as you're a supplier, I mean, you're talking to lots of different companies. Do you have the sense that most, if not all companies realize what you guys realize, that the future is going to be electric and that there will be levels of autonomy? I mean, is there a receptivity to what you say in your messages, or are people still somewhat leery, somewhat skeptical?
No, I think over the last years we have seen a bit more of an alignment of the industry, for good or bad, but there is that alignment on the common trends, right? So e-mobility being big, automated driving being big, the EE architectures being more centralized. So that's a common understanding. And what we can do from that common base understanding is really get into better collaboration as well. So we were talking about the new automotive customers and how they might be open to co-develop. I do see quite a few good examples also with the established OEMs, where we now get together and say, okay, software-defined vehicle, right? The future value is driven by software. Is it really only the supplier, only the OEM doing that, or can't we collaborate? So once we have these common visions, I think there's a completely new space to invent, to create, and then later on to monetize on.
And speaking of monetizing, Martin, where really will the value be in a new vehicle within 5, 6, 7 years? Will it be in kind of the processor stack? I imagine that things like electric motors and so forth will be more commoditized at some point.
Sure. I mean, we will have a part of the vehicle that follows maybe more the old cost plus model, right? Cost plus delivers price and therefore also the profit generation. And I think we will have part of the vehicle that follows more the software world, the consumer's world, where we will have really cool features that car owners, drivers, the passengers want to own and are probably willing to pay more than cost plus. So I think that shift is going to happen.
Martin, as you well know, sales volume and production volume all over the world is way down compared to what it was pre-COVID. We all thought, I think, that once the supply chains got straightened out, everything would go back to normal. Now I'm hearing more and more people say we're never going back to the prior production levels. How do you see it? And if that's the case, what does ZF do? Can you grow the dollar content per vehicle that you're supplying, or what?
Yeah. Now I echo your view, John, and what you hear from the market. So when we looked at our outlook 5, 10 years down the road, we also believe it's going to be hard to crack the 100 million mark again. So on the other hand, I think ZF, but many players in the market have adjusted to those 80 million that we see right now. So I think we are through that process very well. And I would think, let's see what recession does to the world next year, but there is an upside. So there's going to be market growth first of all, but then the other side is obviously bring more content into the vehicles. And that's where I believe with our very comprehensive setup and the various fields we serve, we have chances in those fields like e-mobility, like automated driving, but we have also more content that comes by combining those fields. So how is a vehicle motion controller going to react to the ADAS system, for instance? And we think so through playing in all these segments and spinning system forwards, we will be able to create extra content for the vehicle.
Do you think moving forward, Martin, that the number of suppliers may decrease because of the investments that companies like yours are making in this new technology, the investments that you're making in reconfiguring your facilities to manufacture this product, that it becomes very difficult for there to be anything but large suppliers?
I fear there is going to be a further consolidation amongst the traditional suppliers. I mean, it has to do with these new trends. If you really want to hook up to them and benefit from them, require quite a bit of investment too. So.
think he froze up, at least on my end.
When we go back to venture
there-
capitalist startup-driven companies, right? They will be
Mhm.
there, and they will find their ways into the market as well.
Right.
Very good. We've come to the bottom of the hour here, and so we should probably close up this segment. But Martin, always good to get your insights. You sure have a grasp of what's going on in the business.
Well, thank you very much to the three of you. It felt like talking to an all-star team of automotive journalism. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Martin.
Hey,
That's
thanks,
great.
Martin. Good to talk to you.
Bye-bye.
We'll take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back to talk about more of what's going on in the industry.
How do Bridgestone tires stop shorter on wet roads? It's their HydroTrack technology. But you don't have to know how the science works, just where the brake is. What really matters is their Bridgestone.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what BorgWarner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry.
All right, we're back talking about the industry.
So it's fascinating to me, how here is a company that has, long been a traditional supplier that has completely transformed itself and is in the process of doing so. And, being aware of what it needs to do to maintain relevance right now, but at the same time, respecting the people who have brought it to where it is today. I think that's fantastic.
Well, Martin made a really good point. Their company is foundation based. They're essentially not for profit. I mean, obviously they don't want to lose money, but they're not driven by what Wall Street wants. They're driven by, the tenets of this philanthropical organization that's for the good of people in society.
Mm-hmm. And
Gary, I gotta argue with you. There's one thing that we all saw talking to him that has not changed about ZF.
What?
Their logo. If you look at a pre-war Mercedes-Benz gearbox, it has that same ZF. And Gary and I earlier had talked about like General Motors changing their logo. And, that's part of kind of like the sign out in front of the building, so to speak. I got to hand it to them, just like Ford. It's the same thing. And I'll argue that there's just that resonance will be there forever. So small point. But
yeah. Well, speaking of Ford, and speaking of this subject, so earlier this week, Ford CEO Jim Farley said, and I quote, "It takes 40% less labor to make an electric car. So we need to insource so everyone has a part to play in that growth."
Hey, one thing, Gary, I hadn't heard that 40% number. I've heard executives at Ford talk about 20 to 25%. I've heard other people in the industry say that too. That 40% number is a new one. That's massive.
So let's say it's somewhere in between, and let's say that he just used that number for effect. Okay. So is a company like Ford or a company like General Motors or a company like Stellantis, I mean, do they have the wherewithal to do these new things that need to be done? I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, yeah, we need to do this, but can you? Do you have the skill set? Do you have the technology knowledge? Do you
Absolutely
have
they do. Absolutely they do. Because, look, set software aside for the moment. Electric motors, single speed gear reduction units, they can do that in their sleep. That's not going to be a problem. And in fact, I would say probably when it comes to things like inverters, they can easily do that in-house. The real trick is the battery cell, and they're going to work for it. In this case, is going to work with what? SK and who's the other one? But anyway, they'll let those experts work on the cells, and just about anything else they can bring in-house. Like I said, software might be another story.
yeah, and a lot of these systems too are really, I think the guys that work on automation right now and automated tooling systems are going to transition fairly easily into some of this, like creating electric motors, winding motors, even putting battery packs together. I think one of the challenges is some of these subsystems are on the same critical path as the vehicle development. So you've got, battery battery packs that might end up being part of the vehicle structure in the future. So those two disciplines have to work together. But I think the industry is going to manage this okay. Again, in Germany, what Martin was talking about in terms of labor, it's really different than it is over here in terms of, I think, the government and companies, I won't say caring about the line worker is more than we do, but there's more of a compact, I think, there. I don't know what you guys think about that, but
no, you're right.
Taking all these people, I mean, taking 40% of labor out of these vehicles, what are all these guys going to be doing?
Yeah. But, getting back to your point about the compact, it's absolutely true, Lindsay. You're right, because all the German companies have labor representatives on their board of supervisors. And I mean, they're just not going to let those jobs go away, not quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's go back to what I was asking you guys, and I'll play the devil's advocate here. Okay, if we go back in not too distant history of the auto industry, making components was something they didn't want to have a part of anymore. Okay, so you spun off Visteon and you spun off Delphi, right? I mean, you didn't want to do that stuff. Now that stuff is by and large what is makes an electric vehicle. So you guys are very positive on this. I'm not so sure.
Well, look, things changed, especially with the bankruptcies. So pre-bankruptcies, GM, Ford, and Chrysler were getting killed by their legacy costs. I mean, absolutely murdered. They were paying labor rates that were far higher than what any of the transplants were paying, and much higher than what any of the suppliers were paying. They had to put in pension and healthcare and higher labor rates, more restrictive work rules, and a whole bunch of other things. And so the decision was easy: start outsourcing. Let the suppliers do this. They can do it a whole lot cheaper than we can. So bada boom, bada bang, they go through bankruptcy. It pretty much wiped out their legacy costs. And now Tesla comes around and shows them, hey, you know what? Vertical integration makes a lot of sense. And so the pendulum's swinging back the other way. But I would still argue this would not be happening if they were still burdened by those legacy costs.
Yeah. Yeah, the vertical integration is really interesting. I was at a conference a couple of days ago where there was a GM Ventures partner there. And man, when you look at GM and to an extent Volkswagen and some of these other real biggie OEMs, just like Ford, they want to own it back to the mine now. The whole supply chain.
Yeah, it's certainly a different attitude toward what needs to be done in order to execute, in order to get product out there for people. And it's gonna take, so we think about all the software engineers that are necessary, but just think about all the people who have to start working with mining companies and that need to work with the chemicals on a big scale, not chemicals on a comparatively small scale. I mean, it's the number of people that OEMs now need to employ is a huge factor.
I'm not convinced that they're going to own it all the way back to the mines. What they've learned is that they have to have visibility in their supply chains all the way back to the mines. They have to have visibility directly to the chip companies, because the OEMs never bought any of this stuff, pretty much. I mean, they bought components from suppliers that had chips in them. So it was the suppliers that were dealing with the chip companies, and the automakers really didn't have very much visibility beyond their tier ones, if they even had it there. And the same goes for the raw materials. Now they're realizing, oh my gosh, we have to ramp up battery production far faster than what the mining capability is. We better run out right now and lock in contracts with the mines to make sure that we have it. And even if we don't need those raw materials ourselves directly in our plants, our suppliers do. So we have to lock in the supply of those raw materials for our suppliers. And because we're a big OEM, we can get much bigger, buys with those mines or the chip companies or whatever it happens to be. So, it's what's the thing? Necessity is the mother of invention. They're reinventing their supply chains because they have to.
Yeah. And I think some of this too is, there's far more OEMs than there are sources for some of these natural resources. And so you're seeing these kind of global alignments. Who is kind of aligned with this mine, this nickel mine, or this cobalt mine, or this lithium mine? I've got some worries in this regard, because when you see articles about where it's going to come from, it's usually like there was a turtle pond this morning in some article. And I feel sorry for the turtles there, because their lives are going to change pretty quickly when the big machines come in. But this placid environment that is going to be kind of dredged up for lithium or from wherever. So and then you've got governments in this too. It's a strategic element of all this too.
Yeah. And Lindsay, what you're saying there too points out the danger for the automakers who have said, we'll get to electric cars. We don't see the demand yet. We'll be there when the demand is there. Well, guess what? Everyone who's racing in right now is locking up the supply chain. And the companies that have been dragging their heels, so to speak, are going to find out there's no way they can get the materials that they need.
Yeah.
Oh, money talks, John. Money talks. Don't.
I know, but when there's only, a finite number of sources and they're already locked up, you bet you're going to have to spend a whole lot more money to get what you want.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to change this up a little bit. And so one of these companies that is being accused of dragging its heels is, of course, Toyota. And a couple of days ago, Toyota unveiled the 5th generation Prius battery hybrid vehicle that will get 57 miles per gallon. Since Toyota has been selling hybrids in North America, they've sold more than 5 million hybrids. Now, this is not just Priuses. This is all the brands that have, or all the models that have hybrids. And I was looking at the numbers for this year. So through October, Toyota sold 420,700 electrified vehicles. And, we'll take out the BZ4X, their one electric vehicle, which had a whopping 232 vehicles being sold. Lindsay, I know that you are a big proponent of hybrids, and that you think that perhaps Toyota's model might be the right one.
Well, I'm just looking at the transition, because EV advocates, are looking at tomorrow, and why can't Akio Toyota push a big button there in Japan and just shut down ICE and hybrid production and immediately change over to EVs? And the three of us know that this is coming. We have no idea how long this transition is going to be. I mean, it could be 20 years, it could be 30 years. And what external factors are going to come, wars and so forth, what governments are going to do. And for right now, the hybrid electric vehicle makes sense for a hell of a lot of people, millions of people. And when you look beyond kind of like metropolises in the main regions, it's really the answer for Australia and Africa and most of Canada, these kind of places. I'm one who said, to Mark Royce, I don't know why you're kind of giving up on these. Of course, GM never really got into them the way others did. And Toyota knows this space. I mean, they made the most out of nickel metal hydride chemistry, which is completely bulletproof. 300,000 mile Priuses out there. I don't know. I mean, I am a hybrid advocate, and I think that they're going to play a big role in global electrification. And I think this new Prius looks great. I think it's obviously the best looking one.
The best looking Toyota ever, maybe.
It is. It's incredible. It looks like a lozenge that's been kind of melted down a little bit. But, I mean, and whatever technology, Gary, is in this, if they could, again, spread it into these families as well. I mean, the people that want zero tailpipe emissions, they hate hybrids. They hate anything with an ICE in it. They're the new haters, and they jump on Toyota every morning in my news feed. Why can't they just, make these decisions? But Toyota does things very conservatively. It's why they're the biggest automaker in the world. And, could they move faster? Well, they're not going to move faster by, NGO prompts, so to speak. They're going to move, hybrids are paying for their solid state battery R&D right now. They're going to get there. That's my rant.
Hey, but that Prius looks fantastic. I mean, and I love Toyota has finally gotten away from the angry look that is so common on so many front ends of its vehicles. And I love the Class A surfacing of that, a totally different treatment than I think they've ever done. But here's the counter to what you said. And I agree. I think hybrids are great. 58 miles to the gallon, fantastic. But it doesn't get you to the finish line. So in Europe, they're banning all ICE engines by 2035. And China, same thing, I think, if I've got that right. California and the ZEV states are probably going to get there. So I'm at the powertrain conference, as I said at the top of the show, in Chicago. And that's been one of the recurring themes here is you cannot get to carbon neutrality without going full BEV or even green hydrogen electric vehicles. But you can't do it with hybrids. You can't do it with plug-in hybrids. You definitely can't do it with internal combustion engines. So all of these automakers have committed they're going to get to carbon neutrality by 2050. And either regulations in the ZEV states in Europe and China are not going to allow you to even do it. And for the rest of the world, you can do it for a couple of more decades, but it doesn't get you to that zero carbon or carbon neutrality goal.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And again, it's this transition period, which is kind of this rubber band that how long is it going to be? Yeah, for sure on that. I completely agree. But it's, once everybody who's bought an EV has bought one, and people that must have zero tailpipe emissions for whatever bragging rights, their beliefs, etc. How is the industry and governments, how are they going to take this enormous chunk of current vehicle owners worldwide and take them from the $17,000 value vehicle they own today into $50,000? That's the question with EVs right now.
Well, and this has been another part of the discussion here. By the end of this decade, they see battery costs being at $60 per kilowatt hour. And multiple presenters have shown that the break even or the crossover point where BEVs become cheaper than ICE vehicles is around 2025. So we're 2 to 3 years away from the economic switching where all of a sudden BEVs are going to be more attractive from a cost standpoint.
Well, but I think, John, it's got to be reflected in retail prices. GM talks about a $30,000 Equinox, which is going to be two-wheel drive. And, it's not going to be on par with the model most people buy today.
Right.
So really is, I keep saying, what is the Model T play of this decade? What is going from $700 to $295? And that, that's got to happen. That model's got to happen to take this giant chunk of global vehicle owners and drivers into saying, yeah, I'll buy one of these things.
Yeah.
I mean, used EVs is one, but used EVs are going to be 100% Tesla for a long time, or 80% Tesla for a long time.
Well, you're right. This is me talking, right? So you can't do it with today's technology. But circa 2025, 2026, we're going to start to see the second generation lithium ion batteries that are going to have this crossover point. And it's only, this industry's got a track record of taking a new technology and just hammering over the years until it's dirt cheap. You don't even think twice about it. I remember when the first cameras were talked about for backup cameras, and everybody was like, oh, you can't do it. It's way too expensive. Now we got cameras on a chip and the cost is negligible.
Yeah.
Okay. So John, you were mentioning 2035, there will be a ban. For the EU, I put an asterisk on that because there is some verbiage in their documents that seem to indicate that may not happen. But let's put that aside. Let's say it happens 2035. Okay. So we've already established that in the US, likely this year, Toyota will sell 500,000 hybrids in this market, right? So going forward, as Lindsay said, we're in a transition period. I mean, they're going to sell lots and lots and lots of 500,000 chunks of hybrid product. which, as you point out, Lindsay, will fund the development of these new technologies. I mean, it seems to me that they're making the more rational play, which is to look at, okay, we will sell what people are buying, and then we will have the wherewithal to do what we need to do. So, 2035 is a long time between, now and then.
Right.
And now.
But in automotive terms, we're talking what, 2 design cycles or something like that. So from that standpoint, it's not that far away. Look, Toyota's strategy is very, very logical. It makes all the sense in the world, but legislation is already in place that obsoletes it. And it's not a long-term play. I remember years ago when Honda came out with the CVCC engine without the need for a catalytic converter. And I asked Bob Stempel at the time, who was the head of engineering at GM before he later went on to become CEO. I said, why aren't you guys doing a CVCC? He said, we could do it, but it's a dead-end technology. He said, by 1981, there isn't one car that can be sold in the United States without a catalytic converter, including Honda. And that's exactly what happened. So his decision was, we're not going to go chase a technology that's at a dead end. And I would argue that probably hybrids in the major markets, Europe, US, and China, are a dead end technology.
Yeah. Don't count Toyota out. Remember all the naysayers, Bob Lutz, even Chubba Chetta, that kind of laughed at Prius when it came out. People will never buy hybrids. I mean, there's still people that say, they cost twice as much. You've got a double powertrain in there, but they're working hard on battery chemistries and other things. It's going to be interesting. I mean, they're taking their own path, and I think they're going to be flexible in terms of what they've already laid out. A 10-year EV development plan, I think, is going to get accelerated. But I think hybrids are kind of right. And clearly we all love this new Prius, at least the way it looks.
Yeah. All right. So we need to talk about the company that we need to talk about every show, which is, of course, Tesla and Elon Musk. And there's all the roiling that's going on with Twitter. His ultimatum to people that by the end of today, they have to say whether they're going to go hardcore, all in, work like maniacs in order to keep their jobs. He had that situation where he's trying to charge people $8 a month to get a blue check mark. And then he put that on hiatus, and it was supposed to be back the end of this week. Now he's pushing it back to the end of next week. OEMs are saying, why should we put ads on Twitter? Now they're saying because it's a situation whereby they don't know what their ad will be next to. I wonder how much of it is saying, why should we pay a competitor money to advertise? Let's just find another thing to do. So he's losing all kinds of money there. He's got to defend his $50 billion pay package in court. And this from KBB Brandwatch. And I thought that this is absolutely fascinating. So this is their latest study, and I want to quote: shopper interest in Tesla plummeted quarter over quarter. Tesla fell to 6th from 5th in the ranking of most shopped luxury brands, with 12% of all luxury shoppers considering a Tesla, down 3 percentage points from Q2 22, and notably the largest quarter over quarter loss for any luxury brand. Shopping consideration for the Tesla Model 3 sedan declined by 10% from the second quarter, and the Tesla Model Y and Model S both fell off the top 10 most shopped luxury vehicle list for the first time in 2 years. So all of that said, is this the beginning of the end?
Well,
I'm sure all the commenters are going crazy over there going, Gary is out of his mind.
One question for you guys. The industry does mid-cycle refreshes, and that's really important to kind of keep a model line going. And these guys really haven't. And Teslas right now, to me, are looking kind of, I won't say they're looking old, but they don't change visually. They haven't changed visually. And when you see, 3 of them in your town or 3 of them on your block, it's all the same car. So I think that's, I want to know what your opinions are on that. They haven't followed the industry model of every 3 years kind of changing up.
Well, look, I'm concerned for Tesla, and it's all Elon's fault in this case because you're hearing pundits talk about this is his Waterloo or a bridge too far. And I would agree with that. This Twitter thing is a mess, and he recognized it himself. He was trying to get out of the deal, but stupidly had signed a contract that legally he was bound to buy it, whether he wanted to or not, and he overpaid for it. And now he's in deep over his head in something that I don't think his skill set matches. SpaceX, yes. Tesla, yes. And as you guys know, I was one of the biggest critics of Tesla because people would say, oh, look, the stands would say, look what he did. And look what Tesla's doing here and did there. And I was like, yeah, but they're losing billions of dollars. And as long as they're willing to lose billions of dollars, of course you can do all that cool stuff. But I changed my mind when they posted a full year GAAP profit of over $1 billion. And that's when I was like, okay, these guys have proved themselves. And now I've become, I have a lot of respect and even admiration for what the company has accomplished.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I'm afraid that Elon's going to screw it up. And now I've gone from one of their biggest critics to saying, I want to see these guys survive and thrive. I think they're a great company.
It's an American success story. Yeah.
It totally is, Lindsay. And I'm afraid he's going to drag it down now.
So what's your reaction to this interest plummeting among shoppers?
Look, what he's got to do instantly is get the hell out of Twitter or appoint somebody who's going to run Tesla. I'd rather see him just find a CEO, say, look, you run Twitter, and he should get off Twitter himself and all these stupid tweets that he's putting out. Many of them stupid. I shouldn't say they all are, but he's put out some awfully stupid tweets. Get the hell out of there. Concentrate on what it made him what he is. SpaceX and Tesla. And he alone can turn that around, but it's going to take him to do it. And I just hope that he does it in time, because the stats that you're citing there, Gary, I hadn't heard those. That's very damaging to Tesla.
Well, just think, I mean, the people, I mean, Ford has got, the Mustang, and you've got the Lightning. There's GM, Lindsay, as you mentioned, they're going to come out with the Equinox next year, an EV. They've got the Lyric is out there now. I mean, suddenly there are a lot of credible competitors in that space. And I think that, new stuff drives interest, right? People want the new thing. They don't necessarily want, what's been around there for a long time. And Lindsay, when you're talking about the fact that he doesn't change very much, it occurred to me, isn't that the Model T model? I mean, if we looked at a Model T over the years, it didn't seem to change very much.
So those last 2 years.
Yeah, but that's what killed Ford too.
Right. Yeah, but how long was it out there?
Well, it was out there a long time, right? And Sean just pointed out something that's really good from the control room. He's saying Tesla buyers are waiting for the tax credits because as of January 1, Teslas will again qualify for the $7,500. So that's a good point.
Okay,
that'll help sales.
I think the Cybertruck's going to be kind of pivotal for these guys. He made the mistake that many other automakers have made, Ford with the T-Bird and so forth, announcing it so early. So many things have changed. Prices have gone up. Costs have gone up. And what was cool a few years ago visually. So, the funny thing about Musk is we all know, the executives that run auto companies, and what a job that is, and how many things you've got to keep your eyes on just running an auto company, a big auto company. Add to that, dealing with the Defense Department, dealing with NASA, dealing with all the engineering issues that somehow, go beyond your president of engineering and get up to you. This is enormous. The fact that this guy, well, he's already crazy, but the fact that he's not even more crazy is unbelievable to me. He's got his hands in just, too many pots.
All right, lightning round, then we're going to end the show. Okay. So all of us are jurors for the North American Car Truck Utility of the Year. The finalists were announced this morning at the LA Auto Show. So I want to read these things, and I want a instant reaction to what you think about these. Okay. So first one, Acura Integra.
Not going to be the car of the year.
No.
You don't have to, or what you think about it. So, so people at Acura are like, damn it, McElroy, we're not going to get his vote.
You just want like an adjective?
Or whatever you think about it. But yeah, John thinks that Acura is going to. So what do you think, Lindsay?
Great car.
Great car. Okay. And these, by the way, are the finalists. Genesis G80 EV.
Deserving of the award.
Deserving of the award. I would agree of that, but it's not going to get it.
Okay. Nissan Z.
Bing, 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 bing.
No.
Car of the year.
No. Car felt 20 years old to me. But
Totally
fun.
agree. Totally agree. But cash the check as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Now we're moved to the utilities. Cadillac Lyriq.
Good candidate for this.
Very good candidate.
Genesis GV60. Now this is their first purpose-built EV. So they have the GV80 EV in the sedan category, which is basically a GV80 with an electric powertrain. So anyway, GV60.
Yeah, I like the car, and I think it's a good candidate for this.
Also, very good candidate.
Kia EV6.
Haven't driven it yet. Can't wait to drive it. Really cool looking car.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. Now we move on to trucks. Lordstown Endurance.
Kind of answer to a question nobody asked.
John?
I just drove it this week. I was impressed, but I don't think it's going to win the award.
Silverado ZR2.
Trim line, not a new truck. New
Agreed.
trim line, not a new truck.
It really shouldn't have been in this running, to me.
And the winner, Ford F-150 Lightning.
Yeah, what you said, Gary, the winner.
Yeah. You know.
Okay, do you like the truck, either of you?
The F-150?
Lightning.
Very much.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with my test drive.
Lindsay?
Yeah, it's still a giant pickup truck, but what's not to like about the way they developed it and put it together?
Spoken by a man who owns a Maverick, which is a small pickup truck.
Yeah.
I know.
Which was last year's truck of the year.
That's right.
That's right. All right, we're over time, so let's wrap this baby up.
We're good. See you guys.
Okay.
Hey,
See you,
take care.
everybody.
Thanks everybody
you.
for joining us. See you next
Thanks
week.
for having me.
No, we won't. It's Thanksgiving next week, so we will not see you next week.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Safe travels, John.
Thanks.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
If you like this program and would like to learn more about the automotive industry, check out our website at autoline.tv or look for us on YouTube on the Autoline channel.